Hello lovelies, today we're going to be taking a look at Path of the Aram Thyr, or Thyr, I think it's Thyr, from Black Oath. This is a notebook-sized hardcover book with glossy paper. It's a very solid cover. It is about 130 pages and is released under the Creative Commons license, version 4, if you want to nick anything from it or incorporate it into any of your other games. It's a D20 based progression fantasy. Progression fantasy is helpfully defined in the book as being a fantasy about becoming more powerful and more capable. You find this as a sort of subgenre of anime and some other sources of fiction as well. You often find it in computer games, though it's often inconsistent in computer games, where you get a sequel where you start out less powerful than you were last time but end up way more powerful than you were last time. It's a sort of Avatar Airbender meets Vikings sort of setting, at least in terms of presentation, if not necessarily in content. You could do other similar sorts of things with it. It has the usual sort of D20 compatible stats with the compressed old school bonuses from +3 to -3, +3 at 18, +2 at 16 or 17, +1 at 13 to 15, and so on. Difficulties for tasks are stepped: 5, 10, 15, 20, etc. When you roll to do something, you mix your skill bonuses with your stat bonuses. You get 3 skills at +1 to start with. So that gives you some sort of gauge of at least the starting power level. So these are characters who are special in that they have access to special powers that most people don't get. These are called Wishan or Wishan or something along those lines. It's kind of magic. Most people from different tribes and so on might have an affinity for one type. You have an affinity for either caster, dominator, forger, shaper, or you have no affinity. If you have an affinity for something, then you're better at that thing, less good at the other things. If you have no affinity, you're moderately good at everything, and it mostly affects your advancement. Using powers costs from a pool of points called Ara, which is slightly unfortunate if you know Japanese at all. And if you have no affinity, you start with additional Ara. So you find things more difficult, but you have more energy to cast. If you have an affinity, you get +1 with that particular power. Different clans to which you can belong also have different subtle gifts, such as dark vision or a limited form of telepathy. Characters are people who can channel these special powers, and as they progress from spirit stage to spirit stage as they become more powerful, from the wood stage through bronze, iron, silver, gold and platinum, all the way up to diamond and possibly even beyond. Each degree of this enlightenment and power level means more Ara, more HP, more bonuses to control, reputation, etc. Each of the paths that you can take comes with core abilities. So the Path of the Endless Blade, for example, grants bonuses with bladed weapons, temporary hit points, a ranged slash attack, the ability to pin an enemy in place, spiritual armor, and weapon creation out of Ara. So you can produce a weapon out of essentially nowhere if you choose to. as far as character advancement goes, it's open character XP spending, but then to go up one of these spirit stages, which are kind of but not really levels, you have to meet requirements. So you will have to meet a certain minimum spread of advances and experience in order to go up to the new spirit stage and unlock those abilities. There are less powerful, more minor abilities called unluck. These are sacred scriptures which are inscribed using spirit essence. You take spirit essence from beasts, plants and other arrow wielders, and then these unluck can then also be empowered by spending more aura. So they're kind of like set spells, whereas the Wishan are more sort of general capabilities that you can get a little bit creative with. Setting wise, a little bit scant, but that's fine. The people you're a part of used to live on an island that was surrounded by mist, and they never thought that anything existed beyond the mists. Then one day the mists began to thin and vanish, and people saw that there was land and sea beyond the mist, and people began to explore beyond it, eventually arriving at the new continent of Estron to test themselves and become strong. So there's opportunity for Wishan wielders on the path of the Aram Thyr to become more powerful in a new place, to carve out domains of their own, and so on and so on and so on. So you get the idea. It's a exploration, colonization type story on a new continent full of monsters and God knows what else for you to fight with, to test yourselves and become strong. So there's some setting information, but it's a wild, mostly unexplored continent with limited exposure and exploration. So while things are broadly described, at least in this book, they're not pinned down. This may change if more supplementary books come along. In terms of relationships to other games, this is the equivalent of Scion, if you think of Godbound as being the equivalent to Exalted. It's not quite a Viking adventure story, it's not quite Avatar The Last Airbender, it's not quite anything, it's mostly its own thing, but you can tell the inspirations behind it, which you can with a lot of Black Oath books. That's not anything bad necessarily. Maybe a lot of us should be a lot less precious about hiding our influences. The Wild Frontier has a lot going for it as a setting in terms of freedom and so on, but this may be slightly too much that way. There could have been a bit more information on early colony cities and things like that could have helped a bit. There's some information. Maybe I'm being a little bit unfair there. This is mostly a rules book. The setting stuff is mostly implied or an afterthought. Will there be further support for the game? Dunno. Black Oath usually tends to be kind of do it, done it, move on to the next thing. But maybe there will, maybe there won't. I guess we'll find out in time. Certainly the plan is to release more material for it. So let's think about scores then. In terms of style, it's not quite what you'd expect, but I found that visually and creatively interesting. I mean, you would expect a fairly straightforward Avatar ripoff from this kind of idea, and it's not that, and it's not presented as that. So, and it's fairly clean and clear, but the art where it appears is good and properly illustrative, and a lot of it is action shots, which I'm growing to appreciate more and more. So let's give it a style score of 4. In terms of substance, it's about average for a sort of OSR adjacent sort of game. It's mostly rules, so if that's your bag, that's fine, but you might find it a bit lacking if you're looking for more information on the setting and cultures and so on, that's relatively scant. So in terms of substance, then I'd give it a 3, but that might be a little unfair because it does leave you the room to kit bash your own stuff, bring in your own ideas and so on. So overall then, that is 7 out of 10, 3.5 out of 5. That is above average. Remember, I use the full range of numbers. 3 is an average, and it's genuinely average. That means like it's straight down the middle for this type of genre, production level, and so on. So if you're into the idea, a 3 is worth getting. Anything above a 3 might have some broader appeal or interest to collectors, game designers, voracious game readers, people like that, people who have even slightly passing interest. So 3.5 is not bad by any means. There is no index. The aspects aren't particularly well explained or brought forth out of the text. Not entirely sure how cross-compatibility would work here. These would be very powerful compared to most OSR characters, but it may suit very much as more of a solo game, and there's some support for that, and there may well be more in future. You know, playing a more powerful character, testing themselves against the world around them, that very much suits sort of solo play. So maybe that's more of a thing. It's interesting though, as most of Black Oath's stuff is, and figuring out the influences is a fun little sort of meta game you can have while reading it. And these guys might make good villains and things in certain games. So there's a lot to recommend it, but it's not a knock it out of the park success in the way that some other material might be. But still, you may well find it interesting. You may well find it more interesting than I did, but I think it's a good effort. Just needed to be a bit more, really, and that's where I am with it. Sang. Sup. I'm reliably informed that I'm terrible at pimping my stuff, so here I am, pimping my stuff. You can buy most of the shit that I make over at post-mort.com. Hope to see you there.